Hey guys, on this episode of the Craving Consciousness podcast, I'm going to be talking to you about when I first became aware of the fairy realm. Yes, the fairy realm, how that triggered my main spiritual awakening, what I did afterwards, and what ended up happening. So I'm really excited to share this. A bunch of you on my Instagram stories at I am Brandalina on Instagram. We're really intrigued about the beginning of my journey. And I know I've talked a little bit about this before on one of the episodes, but here's a new episode, and I'm going to just go into a little bit more detail about what happened. So I ended up moving in 2011, the end of 2011, to Traverse City, Michigan, northern Michigan. And I was not in the spiritual industry whatsoever. I always was been a little bit spiritual. I was into the woo-woo stuff. I would be the first person that would want to get her hands read at a Renaissance fair or go get a reading once in a while. And I was very intrigued by it. My daughter was really into fairies, but I always believed that they were make-believe, and I thought it was super cute. So like I would get her books on them and stuff like that. She used to tell me things like, Mom, you need to make sure you leave the bedroom door open. The fairies need to be able to get in and out. And I would just roll my eyes and think that she was super cute. Well, after I moved to Michigan, I think part of the thing that happened there was I went with a blank slate. I moved somewhere I'd never been. I didn't know anybody except for the person I moved there with at the time. And I grew up living in Las Vegas, Nevada. So moving into this beautiful nature place was like, I was like a childlike wonder. And so I believe that's probably what triggered the fairy realm to like allow me to see them, because they call it the gift of sight. When it comes to the fairy realm, most people aren't able to visually see them or even know that their presence is there. So at the time I was with my husband, my late husband now, and we were walking in the woods with our two Pomeranians that we had in the hardwoods of northern Michigan. And we got to this certain part, and all of a sudden I had this like, I don't want to say overwhelming feeling, but it was a feeling that made me stop in my boots and be like, okay, something's happening right now. Something going on with my awareness is happening right now. And it was almost like the oxygen left, like almost like I was in a place with no air. There was like no air moving, but I could still breathe. But that's the feeling that I had, was like, I've just stepped into the unknown. I've just stepped into this different place that doesn't feel like where I just came from. And so when I felt that feeling, which now I would call clairsentience, physical psychic feeling that something was different, I stopped in my tracks and opened up more of my awareness to be like, okay, what is this feeling? What is this? Like, what's going on? And I could feel, not see at the time, tons and tons of beings watching us, like overlooking us. And I knew from the feeling that I got was that there was many of them and they were in different sizes. And the only thing that I could pinpoint enough to even verbalize it in our language at the time was when I was a little kid and we would read, my mom would read me the books, Where the Wild Things Are. I don't know if you guys has ever had that book or whatever, but that's all I could think of, is that I was in this place where the quote unquote wild things were, and they could see me, but I couldn't see them, and they were watching me. They were very curious. This experience that I had was so profound that it triggered me, and I wanted to know more, and I was thirsty to find out more. I didn't like go Google what happened in the woods or anything like that, but I know because of my desire, and now looking in hindsight, right, I'm sure my guides, my angels, my fairy partners knew how intrigued I was. So certain things started happening, and I ended up coming across like one of my Facebook friends post. I don't even know how she was my friend, but you know how that works. And it said something about, do you want to meet your spirit guides? And I thought to myself, well, this has got to be something that's going to help me start understanding what happened to me in the woods. And so the lady's name, to give her credit, is Sarah Limos, which I think now she's married again, but that's her business name, right? Sarah Limos. And I ended up taking that spirit guide class with her, which ended up leading down another path, and ended up mentoring with her as a medium, and became psychic and became aware of my ability to be clairvoyant, psychically see, clairsentient, psychically feel was my strongest in the beginning, and then developed into all of that. So, but what ended up happening, and I want to stick to the fairy realm part of the story, is through that process, I started, having validation that there's things that we don't normally see as humans, right? We see 0.00035% of the spectrum of light. And I'm just throwing that number out there, but it's a ton of zeros with a 3 at the end. So we as humans don't see what's really there. And when I talk about everything already exists, all through time and space, it already exists. It's really about your awareness, being able to become aware of that and be able to see it, feel it, hear it, know it. When we open up our awareness and we develop our abilities, we gain a greater access to what's really, here, what's really around us. And for me, that was the fairy realm, which was weird. Like I said in the beginning, is that I thought they were make-believe. So it wasn't like I was going looking for them. But I believe it was because I was that pure of heart, like being a little kid coming to this nature place that I'd never been to, and just really connecting to nature. I really started connecting to nature in a way that I never ever had before. I would literally lay in the grass and watch the little black ants crawl through the grass. I would sit and look at a tiny, tiny little like dandelion, and I would stare at it for like, I don't want to say hours, but for a really long time. And I started noticing more things about the plants. I started feeling like there was little tiny beings with each plant, or that the little black ant crawling through the grass, was much more than I ever believed a black ant to be. Like super magical, this super magical feeling. And then I started seeing, like I say, psychically seeing more beings. I started seeing what I've talked about on a podcast before, was either a pterodactyl or a dragon flying through the sky. I thought they were pterodactyls for the longest time, and now I'm kind of feeling like they might have been dragons. I haven't seen one for a while, but I started seeing things like that would be flying by in the sky. And my husband at the time thought I was absolutely fucking nuts, right? Like, I just saw a pterodactyl fly through the sky. And I would only share it with him, and he still thought it was nuts. But then I started noticing, like when we would go out in walks in nature, that I would definitely feel these beings. And then I could start to see different types of beings that were associated with different types of trees, different types of plants. Strawberry plants still to this day really get me, because our little fairies are so freaking cute. They have like the little flower on the top of their head, and then they have like little dresses. I know I sound nuts, but I know through all of my development work that what I see is really what I see. Strawberry plants are absolutely amazing. So point being, as I started being able to see the fairies that were associated, or the beings, or the diva, D-E-V-A, as you would call them, that are associated with different life forms, like different plants. Then I started seeing really strange beings, like a giant toad person, which sounds really bizarre. I started seeing like troll, like under the bridge. I'm not even shitting you. I have a picture somewhere under the bridge where there would be a troll. But I also started being able to feel what these beings felt like what their like personality was, if you want to say their personality. I also started being able to see beings that were inside of moss, inside of certain shaped grass. And how I was able to see it, I guess let me share. So it would be more of me, and I should talk about this in my famous Awaken program on how I'm teaching you guys how to see, is a lot of it is just being pure in wonder, like absolutely just relaxing and being filled with gratitude for what you're witnessing in nature. And then for me, the way it works is then I would get like a flash of a vision where I'd be around the moss and I would see a gnome. And I'm going to tell you more about my gnome in a minute. But if I would see some grass, I would feel in my feeling, and sometimes I wouldn't necessarily be able to see all of them, but I would feel in my feeling that there would just be this little baby boy energy, like little people energy. My cabin that I have in Utah now, like flash forward several years, right? 11 years maybe. Like my cabin in Utah, there's these little naked being looking boys that are like skinny, and maybe they're like 3 feet tall, maybe they're 3.5 feet tall, and they love to play ring around the frickin' rosy around this particular tree, and then they go down under the tree. I don't know how they do it, but they do. They disappear down under the tree. So there's all these different types of fairies, right? And gnomes. And so then let me share my little gnome story with you. And then I want to circle back around and talk about human DNA imprints and fairy DNA imprints on humans. So in my awakening process, there was one time that I woke up and some bitch, there was this gnome standing by my bed. And I'm not even lying to you. And he was about, I want to say 2 feet tall or 2.5 feet tall. Really confused me because in my mind, you see the little gnomes at the store, the little ceramic gnomes, they're like 6 inches tall or 3 inches tall. So in my human logical brain, I always thought that's how big a gnome would be. Well, this guy was like full on 2 foot tall being, and he had his little suspenders on and he had a little beard. And I just opened my eyes and I probably saw him for, maybe 2 seconds. And then he disappeared, but my eyes are still open. And I'm thinking to myself, am I crazy? And did I just make that up? Well, I didn't say anything to anybody at that time because I really was like, wow, now I'm seeing freaking gnome in my bedroom. And then he just disappeared, like poof, was gone. He didn't like walk away, he didn't run away, or he didn't fade away, he just disappeared. So I thought, well, I must have just been dreaming. But fast forward a little bit from there, and at this point I was teaching psychic and mediumship development, and I was having my students do practice readings. And one of them did a practice reading on me, and she was like, there's this little man boy next to your leg, and she drew a picture of him. And I was like, that is the freaking gnome that I seen. That is the gnome that I seen, months prior. And then I started getting flashes of him, and his name ended up to be Thomas. One of my other students said that there's a little guy and his name's Thomas. So I, took the information that my students are giving me using the techniques that I was taught and that I excelled in and that I learned, and came to this idea that I really had this gnome. But I also started seeing him in the moss. Like I would get a flash of a vision of him being in the moss, or he particularly loved my one Pomeranian named Prissy. He would like ride on the back of her fur, and I would get like a flash of him being on her. And I know this sounds absolutely nuts, but he would just be there, and I would be like, he loves Prissy the dog. I don't know why he likes her and not the other dog, but I never saw him once with the other dog. But the big thing for those of you guys that are listening that are like, Brandoline's for cuckoo off her rocker, is there was a physical validation of Thomas the gnome from somebody that was not psychic. And that was my late husband. At the time he was alive, and he smoked cigarettes, and he was standing at the sliding glass door, like halfway in and halfway in the house, halfway out, because he wasn't supposed to smoke in the house, right? And I looked over. I'm just sitting on one of the couches. I look over, and there's my Prissy dog sitting on like the love seat. And son of a gun, I gasped because I see Thomas the gnome. He's like sitting on the couch with Prissy, and I go like that, like gasp, like, oh, he surprised me. And as soon as I did that, he like materialized Thomas the gnome into like a dusty orb. like kind of a big dusty orb. And it flew down the hallway and then flew back into the living room and then flew out the sliding glass door. And I was like, did you just see that? And my husband at the time said, yes, what the fuck was that? And I was like, yes, I was so happy that finally it's not just me trusting my ability, right? It's not just I keep seeing this, no, but now I have an actual witness that actually was like, holy shit, what was that? So from then on, Thomas the Gnome was just Thomas the Gnome. I have not seen him since I moved back to Vegas. So I have a feeling that he just maybe is like, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of a brownie, but a brownie is like a fairy type of being, and it stays with the home and it makes sure to like protect the home. So I don't know if he was really like a brownie and he had to stay with that home, if he was connected to the woods over there. Prissy passed away before we ever moved back to Vegas, and she was buried behind like the veterinarians back there. So I don't know if Prissy went off with him, but I like to believe that Prissy's part of the fairy realm now with Thomas the Gnome. Anyway, as nuts as that sounds, I got really into this, and I was more into like all the other psychic and mediumship stuff too, because that blew my mind. But a dead person is really a dead person, right? Like a psychic vision of somebody that's coming into your life is really a psychic vision of somebody coming into your life. If I could tell you what you do for a living or what's coming up for you, that's an actual thing that will end up being tangible. But when it came to the fairy realm, this is somebody that nobody could validate for me, really, except for that time it flew out the door or my other psychic people. This was nothing tangible where you go to the fairy farm and you just see the fairies, you know what I mean? Like they're not just hanging out for everybody to see in the woods. So I had to like really trust that, and I had to really allow more information to come to me for these fairy people. Well, what ended up happening, I started seeing like imprints on people, and they're related to different types of fairy realms, which means that you might be part flower fairy, let's just say, for example. So if that's you, I'm going to tell you, your flower fairy, you're going to be wearing a lot more flowing clothes, much super feminine, very soft hearted, like a cute little giggle that you have, probably really long hair, those types of things. So that would be like a flower fairy. Or I would see like a woodland fairy. And then I would be like, you probably need to live near the woods. And this person that I'm giving the reading to would be like, oh my God, yes, I'm planning to move to the redwood forest, or something along those lines, where spirit and the fairy realm will flow through me to help these human beings understand a little bit more about their purpose. I think it goes way deeper than that, because I truly believe our DNA is not what we've been told it is. I truly believe that our DNA is multidimensional. And I believe that we come here to this plane and we actually have imprints of these other lifetimes that we're living consecutively, right? So that beingness is walking with us, right? Because I believe that there's no such thing as time and space. So you're experiencing all your lifetimes at the same time. But me as being present as Brandeline and being aware of myself as being Brandeline and tapping into your DNA frequency, I'm able to see these other levels of DNA, these other dimensional levels of beingness, which relates to you as a human now, because spirit tells me that. So it's super fascinating to me to be able to bring that fairy realm into the human realm and share with you what that means to you. But mostly of all, and I know the fairies would be like, mostly of all, we are so distracted as human beings. We're so distracted from what's so far from the truth. When I was laying in the grass and I'm watching those ants and I'm watching the flowers come to life in springtime, and I'm watching the cycle of the earth, right? I'm watching my giant maple tree, Cheryl. You guys have heard me talk about her before. I'm watching her come alive and then fade away through the seasons, and watching and feeling the freaking magic and the cycle of nature. And then to come back and think about the life that I had before on, working hard for commercial real estate, hoping to have my 401k, really sticking to what's on the television, eating the foods that people told me to do. And then seeing these two types of worlds and me feeling so connected to the nature side, feeling such a connection and feeling so fulfilled that I knew this other life is just a distraction. So I guess the message here is like, number one, connect to freaking nature, because nature is really where it's coming from. It's really where the frequency is. You're an electronic being, and all of this other stuff is just a fucking distraction for you to create a reality that you don't necessarily want. Versus if you're connected to the nature so strongly and the fairy realm, you're going to manifest a future for us that we do want. And when I say manifest for us, this is true. Everything that you see, hear, feel, and know right now and experience is you putting forth a frequency so that more of the same will come. So if we're so far distracted, how are we going to bring forth what it is that we really want, right? So I believe that's what the fairy realm really wants me to share with you guys, is that you're a multidimensional being, that this planet is your mother, and that we should respect nature, Mother Nature, and the cycles of nature, and bring it more into our life. So I wanted to share that with you guys today, my experience on the first time I had a crazy experience in the woods, and how it led me to have the spiritual awakening, to start working with and for spirit, to start my business in the spiritual realm, to start helping hundreds of people awaken to their spiritual abilities, so that I'm creating that ripple effect and you guys are creating that ripple effect, so that we manifest our new earth, right? So that we manifest something super and magical. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I hope you guys enjoyed it. And let me know if you have any more questions about the fairy realm.